Hi, welcome to the Rundown. My name is Bridget Richardson, and I'm a producer at Mac Studios. And this show is about conversations that center around faith, culture, the latest news, and different things happening within pop culture. So I'm here today with Katie Villarreal. She is a coordinator of youth ministry at St. Faustina Catholic Church in Fulshire. And I reached out to her because I was super pumped about an article I read that she wrote in the Texas Catholic Herald. And let me get the title. It was Social Media and the Universal Call to Communion. And so already I was super intrigued by the title, really excited to talk to Katie. And so Katie, tell us why this title, why you think this topic is important to not only write about in the Herald, but also to come on the Rundown and kind of have this conversation with me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Bridget. I'm very, very honored to be here. So thank you so much for having me. So I was reached out to by the Texas Catholic Herald. I think it's because I'm a 23-year-old youth minister. They were like, she probably knows about social media. Like she probably maybe she knows how to use TikTok. I don't know. So I was like, sure, I can kind of reflect on this. And I think fundamentally why social media is so important right now is that its whole purpose creation was for this connection and networking to happen, like even with Facebook itself, right? I mean, it started out like, how do we network college students with other college students? And I mean, that's kind of really where the platform of social media started to gain a lot of popularity and use. And so it's interesting because I think that's actually getting at something that's at the root of the human person, which is this desire for connection and for communion. And if we look at the beginning, right, of sacred scripture, if we look at the creation narrative, what we find is that our ultimate call, God's original purpose and plan for us was perfect communion with him and perfect communion with each other. And then even when we look at Revelation, when we look at what our destiny is, right, for the future, what we're moving towards is every tribe, nation, creed, tongue, right, professing that Jesus is Lord, coming to the banquet of the Lamb. And so I think that social media's popularity, and it's just, I mean, everybody has, right? So, one social media account or another, really speaks to that inherent desire. And so it's really important that we have we're looking at that with the right paradigm, so that becomes something that can be beneficial and not harmful, since it is getting at such a core and important desire, I think, of the human heart.
Yeah, and I know when we were first talking and planning, it was like, okay, New Year's resolution. Everybody seems to make a resolution about their social media presence. Like, oh, I'm going to do better in 2021. Or even as you mentioned, I think you said some people say, I'm going to limit my time on social media.
Yeah.
So what have you seen that maybe people do well on social media and maybe the things that they don't? And I'm talking specifically, Catholic Christians, people trying to evangelize and use it as that tool in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it is really interesting, right? Because the new year rolls around, or even like a different, especially like, I guess in the Catholic world, like we have these liturgical seasons, right, of like fasting. And anyways, so we like to find these goals for ourselves, so we feel like we can move towards. And one of the conversations that always comes up is social media. And that's so interesting. It's like there's something in us that like recognizes there's something not quite right going on with the way social media is used. And so I think like most, there's a couple of ways, I think. So like I said, right, social media, its initial intention was this connection and networking, which is beautiful. And social media does give us this power in that connection. We can move across, socioeconomic, even physical barriers and obstacles. We can, move towards globalization, and we can communicate with people that are just, we've never met before. And it's fascinating and beautiful and awesome. There's this whole digital world and community that allows us to more efficiently connect and communicate. And that's all good. And again, hitting at one of these central desires of the human heart. But then I think what we usually find on social media is the exact opposite of that, for a lot of reasons, is we actually experience this like profound isolation via social media. And there's kind of maybe the more obvious trends we see of judgment or like comparison. But I think more specifically in kind of the Catholic Christian community, it's like hard for me to even feel like there are these like Catholic Christian social media influencers, I think that's a really interesting trend that we see. And just as much as like a news source, and this is kind of what I mentioned in my article, might cater towards, one particular ideology or something like that. I think we see the same thing in social media where these Christian sites end up posting things that are either like really inflammatory or just very appearance level kind of posturing. It feels like there's a lot of posturing kind of in the Christian Catholic worldview. And so then we start to pretend just because I've posted this one thing, or because, I was very vocal on social media, that somehow that's like covering my Christian mission. Somehow that's taking care of what my responsibility is as a Christian. And we're denying the central mission of our everyday life, of a Christian life, which is to be is to love, and to love the person that's actually right here in front of us. Like right now, the most important thing for me to be doing is communicating with Bridget in a way that's charitable and loving and fruitful, right? I mean, that's my call in this moment as a Christian. And I think we start to lose sight of that on social media. I found this quote from JP2. I love this quote on solidarity. And I think this is so interesting, especially with social media. He says, solidarity is not a feeling of vague compassion or shallow distress at the misfortunes of so many people, both near and far. On the contrary, it's a firm and persevering determination to commit oneself to the common good. That is to say, to the good of all and of each individual, because we are all really responsible for all. And I think that's so interesting, because I think on social media, we so often see that first part, right? Where there's this vague sense of like, oh, I need to post this thing on social media, or I need to respond in this way, or I need to say this thing that sounds really Christian, or, advocate on behalf of whatever this is. And it's this very vague and shallow kind of sense of compassion or care, when in reality, if we're doing that stuff, if we're posting those things and participating those things, like what actions am I taking in my everyday life to live like that, to actually live as the disciple that I'm posturing and presenting and putting that image out there, that's who I am. But how am I actually operating on a day-to-day basis in my day-to-day interactions?
Yeah, this was definitely like my favorite part of the article, because it really hit me too. Like when you post something or when you say something, or even if you're trying to make a statement, even if your intentions are there, like if you're not practicing what you preach, so to speak, or, walking the walk, it's kind of like, well, you just posted it, right? It doesn't, how does that perpetuate itself in real life in a tangible way? And for a lot of people, sometimes they maybe don't ask that question of themselves. So, it is a tool for evangelization, social media, and it is a tool to help people on their journey. But of course, when we as Catholics, as Christians get into posturing, we lose a lot of the audience that we're even trying to reach. So how do you think that we can maybe, 2021 is a good time for people to like reassess, right? Like it's okay to have that sticking point where you can reassess and come back to it and say, okay, here's what was right and here's what was wrong. So how do you think people can maybe turn it around and use it truly as a tool for evangelization and human dignity, and recognizing the other, to have those more intimate moments with people rather than just, making a statement or saying what they think is appropriate because they're Catholic, and they're just really trying to like be that Catholic voice for everybody, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think so. And I personally, right, it really is a question. And as all evangelization and methods of evangelization might be, of what is my personal call to mission and to discipleship? Like, what does it look like for me to be a disciple, a follower of Jesus Christ? And so what that takes, the words of Jesus are just like ringing in my head, like just talking, the parable, he talks about judgment, about the plank, right, in your own eye. And so in that parable, I think is the imagery is so beautiful, right? So Jesus says, right, who are you, right, to go and to try to get the speck out of your brother's eye when you have this huge, like whopping, like telephone pole, right, like sticking out of your own. And it's so interesting, right, because not only is that just so like preposterous, like the idea that like you can't even notice your own, right, huge telephone pole, but like maybe that speck isn't even a speck, maybe that's just your telephone pole. Like it's the very thing that you need to be assessing is also blocking your vision to really understand, like, am I loving this person? Am I posting the right thing on social media, right? And I think what that really comes down to is, am I convicted and rooted in the belief, like securely, that I'm made in the image of God, and that I, right, am of profound dignity and value and worth? Because if I'm not rooted in that the insecurity, the unstable ground that I'm experiencing, it's from that place that I'm going to be operating in a way that's poor on social media, in a way that's unhealthy, right? Whatever, in whatever capacity that might be, whether that is comparison, judgment, posturing, posting just to post, whatever it might be. And so evangelization, right, takes like really considering, right, like that post by that person made me so angry, I want to post something in return, right? Or, oh, I feel so convicted right now to post something about this, to actually step back a second and say, okay, wait a minute, right? Before I'm going to go try to take that speck out of my brother's eye, before I'm going to go try to take that speck out of society's, like a whole eye, like what? Let me actually take a second to examine like the place that this is coming from. And I'm not going to be able to take that huge whopping, telephone pole out of my eye, just as much as I'm not really capable of achieving all of this change that I like want to see in the world that I'm trying to communicate via social media. The only person that can do that is Jesus himself. Right. And so in all of this social media world, it's like, we're just pitched at each other, right? In evangelization, sometimes we get this idea that we're like an army, right? Like marching into the world, like taking people down. But the reality is, like, we draw this like imaginary line between like us and other people, and we pretend like Jesus is on our side, and isn't he so lucky to have us on his side, right? When in reality, we're all on this one side of the line, like looking at Jesus together, right? Just knowing that like he is the only one that's going to be able to like sort this mess out, and we're in this together. And so with evangelization and social media, we have to like take a step back and just re-examine my own motivations and intentions, like and it takes like, that takes some serious commitment to like actually consider before I post a story on Instagram, before I go and share something on Facebook, before I sit for, a million years, like on TikTok, like just like looking at funny videos, like why, let me just like actually intentionally pause and like reflect on why am I doing this? Like what is the point right now of me participating in whatever this might be, and then allowing Jesus to meet us there, wherever we are, right? Wherever we realize that, wherever all of those intentions are coming from, or if it's resting in some place of insecurity or instability, allowing him to come and to meet us there in that moment. And that's just like prayer and living, right? And living in the loving presence of God in every moment. But that intentionality, I think, with our social media usage is the most important part. And then really letting Jesus meet us there and help us get that, get that telephone pole out of our eye. And he's not condemning us. It's all in a spirit of healing and reconciliation.
Right. And I think that, you're bringing up a good point about the intentionality of it, because when you hone in on your own intentionality, like through intercession of the Holy Spirit, that's where you can like authentically be something out there on social media, right? Like that's when you can truly maybe say something that might impact people. Or, I think even people forget about direct messaging sometimes that, you don't have to do a post to
Yeah.
everybody. You can direct message someone if you really want to say something like, hey, here's what it meant to me, or here's what I thought. Or even, if you want to have a more thoughtful dialogue with someone outside of just a public post, right? So I guess from there, when you do have that more intentional mindset, you are operating within your authentic self. Like, we don't want to shame anybody into like not utilizing it, because it is a tool for evangelization. And, like as we discussed, Pope Francis said we need to operate in this digital world to meet the culture where they are.
Yes.
So how do you think that when you are doing it authentically, when you are trying to reach people, when you are trying to truly use it as a tool for missionary discipleship, how can it be used for the good? Like how can people really be out there as an advocate, and you can be like an influencer, a Catholic influencer, but still really have meaningful content and like have something that people really can buy into, and like, oh, this is different than maybe what I've seen from some other people.
Yes, yes. And I think so much of it has to do with, just like you're saying, is it's this deep and discerned like call from the Holy Spirit of how am I supposed to be moving about in this world? And then ultimately what you're able to do on social media is exactly what we were talking about, like that new creation vision almost of all of us actually being able to unite, to find these like commonalities, these human like commonalities between us all, and actually like personify that via social media, to put that out there, to help to create those connections, and ultimately also to even share share, to be able to share things in such a way, whether that be information or even like a call to action, right? To where it is like true and authentic advocacy, right? Just like Jesus was a true and authentic advocate for all of these different people, right? And he was able to do it in such a way that he was throwing these forgiveness parties for sinners, right? And they knew exactly what he was about, right? Like there was no question what a living as a disciple of Jesus, what that looked like, right? Like this intense call to social justice, this intense call to like sexual morality and integrity, right? Like they knew that was like his world and what he operated under, but at the same time, they were so comfortable. There was something so captivating about the way that he presented ourselves, just like the way that we can present ourselves on social media, where people feel like they can actually explore this. Like what is it that you're offering here, and actually becomes attractive and something that can really powerfully reach across in ways that we wouldn't be able to normally in our everyday life. And like you said, Pope Francis, and that's how I started my article, right? Like talks about how because social media is such a it can be used as such a powerful tool for evangelization, and because there really is this like digital world, and as long as we stay rooted in where our allegiance, right, truly lies, which is as sons and daughters in the kingdom of God, then we're able to operate in the world, right, in the digital world, but not of it, where we present ourselves as these that city on a hill, right? That lamppost. We're not going to hide it under a bushel basket, but we are going to be this warmth, right, and light that actually attracts people, and is something that helps. Makes things more clear. That's what people who are willing, right, to engage in dialogue. Like you said, I think direct messaging is like the lost tool of the century. I mean, how powerful to be able to communicate with people so easily like that about important things. But we feel like all I can do is comment, right, on this public, instead of really, being able to, and that's one of those moments where you take in a second and think, oh wait, maybe I'm posting because I want other people to see that like I was able to, I won this argument, or I had something to say, instead of just, what's more beneficial is that this person and I have an intentional conversation, and social media provides this super efficient way for me to be able to do that.
Right. And, like, even if, somebody may respond, somebody may not, right, with direct messaging too, but even just putting yourself out there in that way to make a statement, like, it's even more profound in a way that you were kind of like making yourself a little bit more vulnerable too, to
Oh,
that
yeah.
person for their input, their critique. And, I'd like for us to talk a little bit about, that aspect that you said earlier. It's one of unity and solidarity, and how it's not, especially right now where the world is really polarized, you seeing like, people seeing we're on this side, everybody else is on that side, when really it's all of us and then Jesus. So
Yeah.
that's, that shift in thinking is huge. Like I just love, I need to go back and sit with that, because it's true. We're all in the same boat. There isn't any us and them. It's like all of us, and then there's Christ. So how can you shift that into a message of unity and solidarity, and really, be a part of the sheep a little bit more, but still do that evangelistic work
Yes.
through the way that you present yourself, the types of conversations that you have, even if you are on TikTok for hours, like it's to figure out like, how does this culture think, how can we reach them in a way that's meaningful,
Yes, yeah. I think, and the thing that's like coming up in my heart, right, is that we not only like find between each other things that it's not just about like where we are similar, right, or where we just find these human, well, you know what, like we share these different, ideas about what social justice looks like, but at the same time, internally, we both have this like ache and desire, right, to see justice in its truest form executed. But I think that we also, it comes with like this, it's like you said, where we actually are like secure and brave enough to venture into the culture, to actually understand what people are aching for, and to not just assume like sameness, that we've had the same experience, right, on social media, or that their reasons for posting that or communicating in that way are the same reasons that I have when I communicate or post in that way. Like to actually be like, just like Jesus would, right? To actually go to the person and to see the person that is behind all of it, right? Behind all of the culture and social media, that the ultimate purpose is that connection with the person that is there. And so letting that become our mindset, that I want to engage the people in this, and I want to engage the culture. And so that might take actually stepping outside of my comfort zone and actually exploring these things that I don't necessarily understand, so that I can, even because maybe I want to advocate for that, I want to say something about that, I feel like I should, but I'm like, I don't, but then I hear all these different things. Like, I don't know, like what, so I'm actually, instead of just staying on this, oh, I don't know, stage, or just saying, well, I'm just not going to say anything, I'm just, I'm out, is actually saying, I'm going to step in. I'm going to step in, because I am rooted in this identity of mine is taken care of, and that person's taken care of by God, and we're loved, and we're on the same side of the line together. And so there's no fear in me actually engaging that, like trying to explore something maybe that I don't totally understand, so that I can advocate for it effectively. If I discern that that's what I'm being called to do, then I'm actually able to be an effective evangelizer and an effective and loving advocate for whatever issue, people group, whatever that might look like or be. And then I'm able to, even social media, I think also is a pathway for us to actually gather information too, and then to live out in our daily life. So not only can we take our daily experience to bring into our social media experience, we can actually take that digital world, get this wide spanning understanding of the global atmosphere, and then actually apply that to that. I mean, apply it to our daily lives. That's probably one of the biggest benefits of social media, is that we're actually able to gain a lot of information and understanding of people, and we're able to apply that to our own lives as well.
Yeah, I think that's like the perfect missionary description of what you could be doing, is taking little pieces of that, applying that to your own world, and then putting it back out there with that message of Christ, with the message of the Spirit moving through us, with God's presence in the world.
Yes.
And I think it's so interesting, because I know like sometimes people hate on like young people and millennials about their use of social media, but what I've seen is that sometimes maybe older generations are a little bit more aggressive in their social media presence and the way they operate. And so I find that to be interesting. So for my last question for you, it's so beautiful to talk to someone who's in youth ministry and to someone who works at someone who works at a parish, because you are literally like teaching the future of our church, and the future is now, right? They are on social media, they're active, they're trying to be advocates, they're trying to figure out their place in a growing and changing world, like we all are. But they are the ones who are going to be the leaders in 10, 15 years. So what is that like in interacting with the youth, helping them see things in this way, and even learning from them and how maybe we could utilize some of this to evangelize the church in a more effective way too?
Yes, they inspire me, especially I think with the social media usage. Like I even think about like my little brother. Like there are some things that I'm like I am nervous to like put something out there like that. That's just so like so humanistic and like so just it is bold, like some, and I have seen, especially just like in, like just this, like there are, junior high and high school, there is a probably more than ever before, like, yes, people talk about like, oh, they're lonely, they're depressed, right? Like all these things, but more than that, what I have seen is like this desire, like a recognition that like all is not as it should be. And like, I want to be a part of the solution. Like I want whatever that looks like I want to be a part of that solution. And you see that like explicitly via social media usage. Like teens are like wanting to engage in conversations, even if they don't know, like the right way necessarily to go about that. They're not afraid to post something that they feel like is an important thing to put out there, and that feels valuable to them. And they feel like they want very badly to be a part of change and to be a part of these, they recognize and they see, and they want to be a part of the solution. And so that inspires me, like in my social media usage, is that like I want to be, that intentional with advocacy and all that stuff. So anyways, sometimes with teens, which is just with everything, there's just a lot of raw like energy and it's so good. Like it's so blessed, like all of just the energy and like the love that's there and stuff. But sometimes you do have to, because the culture is also going to tell you a billion and one things that are not true, about what social media should look like and what, and how you should be operating on social media and all that kind of stuff. And it's even like I was a teenager, 4 years ago, and so much has changed with, like what you, like what social media looks like and how you operate on social media, what apps you use to edit, like it's all changed, so much. And so it requires first and foremost that we do have an awareness, like as just, as a young adult, as anybody, right, that we actually have an awareness of what is going on social media, because it does provide so many structures and like the infrastructure for growth in teenagers. Like that's how I kind of think of it. Like they have all this energy and then it's just going through like the cultural infrastructure. And so our job is, as trying to evangelize teens in particular, right, or teaching them how to evangelize, is recognizing first that infrastructure that's already there by the culture, how it can be harmful to them, even though it's using all this raw energy and this desire for social change and all this good stuff, that's all good. But sometimes we have to kind of clear the debris a little bit and think through, okay, what is the culture saying? And then how am I going to fit my Catholic infrastructure here? And so it's the same awesome, good, raw energy, but it's going through an entirely different infrastructure that's very similar and can operate within the world effectively, just like Jesus was able to operate within the world effectively and boldly and strongly. But that we were not afraid to actually wipe away that and then go through kind of our new Catholic Christian perspective, whether that be the way we view another person or whatever, morality, whatever it might be, that we're able to equip them to be able to notice kind of where all those filters are, and then be able to let Jesus meet them in all of that.
Yeah. And sometimes literal filters, right? Like your identity and your view of who you are.
Yes.
Like for that, maybe not necessarily to be wrapped up so much in the culture, but to reassess it and help them see that this is the worldview and the infrastructure that is literally woven within your being, right? And then this is how you can operate in the world. Like, I think your work is so interesting, and it's a tall task, right? Like that's huge, but it's so like you need people like you and youth ministers who are doing this work to educate and to form and to meet the teens where they are in the spaces they are and help them think about themselves in the world in a way that's life-giving and takes that raw I like how you use that raw energy, like it's so true. Take that raw energy and mold it and shape it and make it something beautiful for missionary discipleship.
And praise God, like we don't actually have to do that part. Like he takes care of it. And we're just,
yes, that's the best part.
I'm like, let me just try to make the space. And like, I mean, he gets in there and he does. Like, I mean, and it's all, and then I could, that's beautiful imagery, right? Because I mean, he can just, and then he creates these beautiful, unique things when we let him actually be the one that's getting in there and creating.
Well, Katie, I have so enjoyed this conversation. This topic is so interesting. And I think that it's definitely one that people are probably looking back at some of the usage of their social media, at the end of the year and looking into 2021, like, how can I be different? How can I think differently? And we'll definitely include your article linked in the description, because it was just a beautiful reflection of how you can think differently and be more introspective before you post, before you say something. So thank you for everything, all your contributions. And I'm excited to read more that you write, more, see more that you post. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you so much.